This is Texans TV. Texans Extra Points is sponsored by Community Coffee, strong as our roots, by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by your Houston area Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas, and by Emoji, the official business bank of the Houston Texans.
We're ready. This is Texans Extra Points, and the good guys are back in action. We got some good guys here to talk all about it. I'm Drew Dougherty, your host. We've got Brandon Scott of SportsRadio 610, as well as Sean Pendergast from SportsRadio 610. And you're both writers. You're writerly writers, as they like to say over in Europe. You write occasionally for the Houston Chronicle, and you with the Houston Press. You guys ready to get back on the horse and ride?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Before we do that, we're going to talk about the offense. But before we do, we got to get some quick hits out of the way and let you know what's going to happen later on in the show. We've got a telestrator that's going to deal with a really cool offensive set that we've seen over the last 6 games for the Texans. Plus, I'm going one-on-one with linebacker Henry To'o. And as always, we've got to do some players to watch, specifically some Texans to watch when they line up on Sunday. And as always, we got to finish with keys to a victory. But like we've done all 6 weeks since this show began, we're talking about the offense. We're talking about C.J. Stroud specifically, and there's this thing called an over-under, and I make this gambling joke all the time, but an over-under, and you're familiar, yes, we make that gambling joke as well. It's a time-honored tradition, but C.J. Stroud, over-under touchdown passes in this game. He's averaging 1.5 so far through the season. He's got 9. The Texans have played 6 games. 1.5. Does he throw over or under that?
I got to go over.
Okay.
This is a team that does not have a good secondary. They're not a deep defensive team. They give up a ton of yards to wide receivers, and C.J. Stroud loves throwing to his wide receivers. I'm going over on 1.5.
I like that one. How about you?
And I've always been known to take Sean's betting advice because he's been doing it long enough, so I can appreciate that. But no, I think everything that he says makes sense. And C.J. Stroud, we've seen him throw 2 touchdowns against the Jaguars, against the Steelers, in the most recent game against the Saints. I don't think that this Panthers defense quite measures up against those. If he can do it against those defenses, he can surely do it against this one. I'll take the over.
Yeah, speaking of, he's getting Offensive Rookie of the Year talk, deservedly so. What's one thing about him, though, that has helped him succeed the most in your mind?
Yeah, and I thought about this for a while because I thought there were a number of things we could go with, some of the intangibles like his work ethic, his coachability, how much he cares. But really, and I hope this is not oversimplifying it, but really, man, he's just good. He's talented.
Yeah.
The dude is talented. That's what stood out about him in the evaluation process going through the draft. You're like, man, that guy sure is accurate. He's had some pretty big games in college. And then it's the same thing in training camp, and it's translated into the season. The guy is just talented.
I agree with everything Brandon said. To me, the biggest thing, when people ask me about C.J. Stroud outside of the market, like, why is he doing so good? He is a quick study. He takes mistakes that he's made, and he doesn't make them over and over and over again. Boy, when he was getting sacked earlier in the season, 2 games in, he stopped getting sacked. And that was a lot him. It wasn't just the offensive line. Getting the speed of the operation going was an issue 2 games into the season. That's not an issue anymore. He is a quick study. He adapts quickly.
He does that, and it's easy to see that happening from our perspective as well. There's milestones that he's overcome. I mean, you talk about that at the beginning of the season. In the preseason, think about at New England, wasn't his best game, and he made improvements game after game after game, finally threw the touchdown against the Saints. Okay, complete this sentence. The Texans pass catcher who will shine the brightest in Charlotte is who?
I'm going to go Tank Dell. He's back after being gone for a couple of weeks. I think CJ's going to want to get him involved early in the game. There's a ton you can pick because, like I said earlier, they give up a lot of yards to wide receivers. But I'm going to go with Tank Dell and his return to action this week.
He's good with yards after the catch. Who about you?
And I really like Sean's Tank Dell pick. I'm going to go with Nico Collins just for the sure fact that I feel like he has, even though he hasn't had necessarily the strongest last couple of games, I still feel like he's established himself as the top receiver, as CJ's top weapon in this offense. Now, we've seen Dalton Schultz have 3 pretty big games with the touchdowns and back-to-back games, but Nico Collins, for my money, is still wide receiver number 1 on this team. I'd have a hard time imagining him not having a big game.
All right, let's talk about the ground game. What's it going to take to get it going? We saw glimpses of it against the Saints. They cracked the 100-yard mark, but right now, as it stands, going into Charlotte, Dameon Pierce is averaging 2.9 yards a carry. As an offense, they're averaging less than 4 per carry. What do they need to do better?
Doesn't it seem like they did unlock something, though, against the Saints?
Absolutely.
And I think
and really the last drive against the Falcons the week before.
And I think that's my answer, because of that. That is my answer, that they just need to continue to do what they did there. Go with more reps for others, okay? Dameon Pierce, mix it up with Devin Singletary. Styles makes fights, right? So you got different styles between the two of them. I think they both have a lot to add. So maybe not force feeding it to Dameon Pierce, having him have all the carries, something that they found out in the Saints game. Mix it up a little bit.
I think continuity on the offensive line. They've started so many different combinations. This was the last time I think they started the same combination 2 weeks in a row. So it stand to reason that it looked a little better against the Saints. There's probably another move coming with the offensive line when Juice Scruggs comes back. And I don't know that Titus Howard is going to be left guard forever on this offensive line. So there's probably another big move coming. But I think in this style of offense, continuity on the offensive line, I think, is what they really need to get things going.
Good stuff. We're going to talk about the defense, and we're all friends here. And one of our other friends is a guy named John Harris, who's excellent with the X's and O's and the telestrator. So John has this telestrator on the Texans offense.
Sometimes you're not going to get, as a quarterback, a nice, neat, clean pocket. You got to make plays out of it, and off structure, off platform. And there's a lot of noise about C.J. Stroud not doing that at Ohio State. Well, I didn't listen to that noise. I didn't create that noise because I saw him do this plenty of times. So let's go to the telestrator presented by BMW and show you how his creativity and getting out of the pocket can help the Texans here. Saints are going to drop 8 into coverage, so they're going to rush just 3. 1, 2, 3. That's it. Okay? These two are going to play halves of the field. These guys are all going to man up. So Noah Brown's going to come out of the backfield, and they're just going to man up on everybody. They're going to play physical, press. Lattimore's going to try and beat up Nico, but this is man-to-man across the board with 2 safeties over the top. Davis is going to lurk here, essentially spy on CJ. So CJ is going to have time to throw here. The problem is, with all these guys dropping, there really isn't an open guy. So CJ is going to take the snap. He's going to get good protection here, as you should, 5-on-3. But there's just nothing available. This is 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. So where does he go with the ball? As you can see right here, I mean, the Saints were pretty physical. There's nothing really there. Now, maybe you could have thought there, but hey, you got Davis lurking. So CJ does what he should. He's got some room out here. He's going to buy himself some time. Now, what I love here is he's got all this room. What it does is it brings Davis. That takes 8 down to 7 guys in coverage. And what that does is it opens up Dalton Schultz on the scramble rules. So Dalton was coming across this way. When CJ scrambles, he starts back this way. Then I want you to watch Dalton right there. See that hand go up? Right there. See that hand go up? Hey, I'm open. Now all CJ's got to do, because he's got some room here, is just flip it over the top. Nice synergy with Dalton Schultz to make the catch. And creativity getting out of the pocket. What can you do? Look, rolling left and throwing back this way, that's hard to do. And it's not often the right thing to do. But C.J. Stroud seems to have a really good knack for when to do it, how to do it, and then executing it perfectly as he did here.
Second and goal from the 2. Stroud fakes the give, throws back of the end zone. Caught Nico Collins. Touchdown, Houston.
We're back here on Texans Extra Points. Drew Dougherty and my good pals, Sean Pendergast, Brandon Scott, both 6'10", Sports Radio 6'10". Now, guys, the Texans defensive line so far, in your mind, has, complete that sentence, what's the last word?
Improved against the run, for sure. They're much better, certainly way better than, they're light years better than last year, and they're better than they were at the beginning of the year, where they were giving up chunk plays to Zach Moss and everybody on the Ravens and things like that. So I think improved against the run. They become a little more stout against the run.
I got you. How about you?
Yeah, I like that as a positive. I will say, for me, if I'm just completing the sentence, existed. That's how I feel. I felt like they've just kind of been there. It wasn't really until, I guess, second quarter into the third quarter of that Saints game when I really started to notice the defensive line, really start to see them make an impact on the game. Not that they don't make an impact on the game, but they weren't making enough of an impact on the game.
Undersung defender, who would it be for you so far?
Yeah, so for me, I really like some of the rookies that we don't talk as much about. You know, we talk a lot about C.J. Stroud on the offensive side, a lot about Will Anderson on the defensive side, but Henry To'oTo'o is going to be my pick here. You know, you're looking at the depth chart and how he's moved his way around it, played all of the linebacker spots at various points. I think you still want more, and if you were talking to D'Amico Ryans, a pretty darn good linebacker himself back in his day and knows a little bit about linebacker play, he'd probably like to see probably a lot more from his linebacking core than what we've seen so far, but Henry To'oTo'o and what he's shown 6 games into his career as a rookie, I think has been pretty impressive.
Especially
Not something we talk about a lot.
especially compared to considering where he was drafted. Now he had a nice pedigree in Alabama, but you don't normally see a guy come in and start in that spot, taking where he was.
This was the hardest one for me.
Undersung, okay.
This was the hardest one for me because I feel like this whole defense is a bunch of sort of unsung guys, other than Will Anderson, who's a big star because he was picked 3rd in the draft. And I think Will's probably their best player, which says something because Will's been good but not great so far. They've really accomplished this as a unit so far. This was a hard one for me. I would say Jimmy Ward. If everybody's unsung, then I'll go Jimmy Ward. If I'm truly going unsung compared to the guys that are already on the team, I thought, I'll go with MJ Stewart. They had injuries at safety earlier this year. With Jimmy Ward missed a couple of games, Jalen Petrie missed a couple of games. MJ Stewart's played about 300 snaps on defense for this team and had his best game against New Orleans when he was out there for a bunch of snaps in Week 6. So I'm going to go MJ Stewart.
MJ's a good choice. He's been excellent on special teams the last couple of years here, and to do what he's done on defense, been very, very important considering just like what you said. I'm going to go with Blake Cashman. I don't think going into the season, so many people would say that's the guy that's going to make plays, going to be the defensive player of the week. Now, you guys were at training camp and you're at every practice, and you saw that, but I don't think externally anybody had Blake Cashman on that list of guys who
number one on Pro Football Focus.
Isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
I've been singing Blake Cashman songs since training camp, so I had to go unsung. Some guys that I wasn't singing about. I've been singing about Steven Nelson and Blake Cashman. Hadn't sung as much about Tua. But you're right about that, man. He's been incredible.
Yeah, they said, hey, you're not going to play this one and this one and this one. You're staying in this spot. Own it, and he has owned it indeed. So we heard what he thinks the Texans have to improve on defense. What about you? What's your?
They got to get quarterbacks on the ground. You'll hear this again in my keys to the game in just a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean they've got to turn these pressures into sacks. They've got to turn. It can't be that it's just they're pressuring quarterbacks. They're getting rid of it, either completing passes or it's incomplete, and it's 2nd and 10, not 2nd and 18 or 19. So they need to get quarterbacks on the ground.
Get them on the ground. Get some sacks, as Connor Barwin once told Brian Cushing. Sacks get stacks. Okay, we heard about Henry To'o just a moment ago from Brandon. And I got a chance to go one-on-one with the rookie linebacker earlier this week. Linebacker Henry To'o joins us now. Henry, the bye week is behind you guys. What was the enthusiasm level like at practice this week?
Man, guys came back recharged. I think that was the biggest thing for us was going back. We had such a physical but also emotional past 6 games, So getting to be away from that, I think the guys, we came back super excited, super juiced, and ready for, this long haul we got coming up.
Yeah, tell me about the progression individually for you. What was it like? You didn't start to start the season, but you wind up starting there, shortly thereafter. What was it like for you? You got better, I imagine, in your mind.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is going like this every single week. Obviously there's going to be some bumps in the road, some things that I can work on, and not every game is going to be a great game, not every practice is going to be a great practice, but ultimately making strides every single week on one little thing that I can work on.
Collectively as a defense, you guys are top 10 as far as points allowed. You're not giving up too many points. Yeah. I know you guys want to do better in a lot of areas. What are some places you guys are seeking improvement?
I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think getting all 11 guys on the same page, flying to the ball, and ultimately creating turnovers. Our turnover goal every single game is 3 turnovers. So trying to get that, aim for that every single game, will ultimately make us, one of the best defenses in this league.
Heading to Charlotte, taking on the Carolina Panthers. When you look at this offense, what's the first thing that stands out to you?
Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Bryce Young.
Easy, right?
Yeah, Bryce. I mean, he's a commander. He's smart, intelligent, knows where to put the ball, how to get their guys open. But, they're also a physical team. They want to run the ball. They want to be able to get you to play smash mouth football with them. But I think they do a really, really good job of using Bryce and getting their guys open.
All right, Henry, start of the final 11. Best of luck against the Panthers. Can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it.
Third and 3 from the Houston 32. CJ in the gun, one back Boone. CJ gets the snap. Here comes the blitz. CJ firing downfield to his right. And Tank has it at the 40, the 30, the 20, 10, 5. Touchdown! Tank Dell to the house!
Wow.
We're back here on Texans Extra Points. Drew Dougherty with a couple of my friends from Sports Radio 610 and Brandon and Sean. Okay, lots of talk about the top 2 picks. It's really the top 3 picks when you throw Will Anderson in, but quarterback versus quarterback, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, understandably so. So With what we've seen so far from Bryce Young, is he doing okay or nah? What's the deal?
I can't say I've sat down and watched every Carolina Panthers game, but I have watched a few of them because I'm totally intrigued. I mean, this Stroud and Young thing is going to be a thing for a long time around here, I would imagine. So I think, other than the win-loss record, he's probably right about where you expect to. I would thought they'd have won a couple games by now, if I'm being honest. But he's been pretty accurate with the football. I don't know that he's got a ton of weapons. Adam Thielen is getting worked right now as a wide receiver like he's Jerry Rice. So I would say he's probably a little close to nah, but probably more so like right where I would expect a rookie, even a highly drafted rookie to be.
Sure.
Yeah, that's how I would put it, is that he looks about like a rookie. I think what's really hurting the perception of Bryce Young right now is how it started, because it started pretty bad. Then he gets hurt. And then right here in Houston, C.J. Stroud is doing some otherworldly things. And so when you add all of those dynamics into it, I think that kind of makes it a little bit worse on Bryce Young and the impression that he's made. But I think he's doing fine. Like Sean mentioned, he's been mostly accurate with the football. He isn't working with a whole lot, been pressured a lot, been sacked a lot. So I think that once his situation improves, or once he gets a little bit more experience under his belt, that he should be fine. But it's got to feel good for Houston fans to feel how they feel about the quarterback that they get.
Hey,
No doubt. And they're coming off a bye like the Texans are. They've also made a change. Frank Reich, their head coach, normally called plays. That's not going to be the case. It's the offensive coordinator doing so. So I wonder how much that jiggles things up with what Bryce Young is going to do. I almost said Bryce Youngman, and then I said Bruce Stroud. So yeah, I'll get it.
And then Thomas Brown is the offensive coordinator in question that you're talking about. So there's a lot of B's going on in there.
Speaking can sometimes be hard for me. Brandon, tell me about Brian Burns and that Charlotte defense. I mean, what do you think about Carolina?
Man, the defense, that's the one thing that I feel like has been a little bit disappointing, because you go into it and you think Bryce Young is a rookie quarterback. They didn't have a lot of weapons going in, but they've been injured. Their defense has not necessarily lived up to the expectation, but Brian Burns still is that guy. He's still somebody that C.J. Stroud is going to have to be mindful of. And so if there's a guy to circle on a team that hasn't done much of anything all year, it would be Brian Burns.
He's still that guy, and he's still that guy that gets brought up in trade talk every single year, it seems like, for the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping he gets traded before Sunday. I'm hoping whatever we're talking about right now is irrelevant, because I hope he gets traded before Sunday. But he's their best player on defense. He's the one guy they have that can wreck a game, on a play or two.
No doubt. All right, it's time for our Texans to watch against the Panthers. Who you got?
My Texan to watch is Dameon Pierce. I'm hoping that the Texans have taken this bye week and really kind of able to fine-tune some things in the run game. Maybe even Dameon get a little time off, clears his head a little bit. He's probably faced criticism for the first time since he's been a Texan over the last few weeks, just because the run game as a whole just hasn't gotten out of first gear. The Panthers aren't good really at anything defensively, including against the run, so I'm hoping that Dameon Pierce and the run game get going.
I like.
Yeah, and for me, it's Will Anderson Jr. There's been a lot of focus, I feel like, over the last couple of weeks about his sack numbers or lack thereof. There not being a lot of production in terms of just sack totals, period, but a lot of the pressure rates and a lot of the sort of ancillary stats make you feel really good about what you see. And then just the eye test of watching him. But he's going up against, and this is sort of a game within a game, but going up against Carolina Panthers left tackle Ike Ekwonu, who was somebody that a lot of people thought the Texans could have drafted the year before, number 3 overall. He goes 6 to the Panthers, played every game last year for them, but has struggled a little bit, poorly graded on Pro Football Focus at left tackle this year. Could that be the opportunity that Will Anderson Jr., that's my pick, or any of the defensive linemen, if you're listening, to go wreck the game against Ike Ekwonu? But Will Anderson Jr. is the one I'm watching.
I like that. Since you took that, I'll take Jonathan Grenard, because he'll probably line up over Icky as well. So give me Jonathan Grenard. He's got 3.5 sacks so far. That leads the Texans. He's going to see Will Anderson. We'll see a lot of attention his way, so maybe Grenard doesn't get as much, and maybe Grenard goes off. But I like these two picks as well. Okay, guys, we have keys to a victory after this break, so don't you move a muscle. More Texans Extra Points is on the way.
Extra Points has been sponsored by Community Coffee, Strong as Our Roots, by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by Mattress Firm, the official sleep partner of the Houston Texans.
We return. Texans Extra Points. So happy that you're with us, and we got to get to that portion of the show, that time of the day when we pick keys to a win. What 2 things must the Texans do to come away with a dub?
I would say my first one is keep C.J. Stroud upright and clean. Like we said, Brian Burns is the one guy who can wreck a game. He's got 4 sacks this year. When C.J. has time to throw, there's very few guys on the planet that are better than him with his accuracy hitting guys. So I say keeping him upright. I think the other thing, too, hope that the Texans haven't read their press clippings over the last couple of weeks. Them being 3-3 has been a big story around the league. People are starting to catch on to the Texans a little bit. This is the first time they'll have been a road favorite since late in 2020. It's the first time that they'll have been a road favorite of more than a field goal since 2019. So I don't think they're going to look past the Panthers, but let's make sure that they're still treating this team, they're treating themselves and this team like the Texans are an ascending team, not a team that's already there.
And I saw you, Sean, looking at me when you said don't read the press. Yes, I've been writing a lot of nice things about the Texans.
Read Drew's stuff.
I
hope they read his stuff.
Yes,
Don't internalize it too much.
Stay away
Look,
from
when
it.
you're playing well, the press clippings are positive. So hopefully they continue to play well. Mine, look, you never want to disrespect the opponent, all of that, blah, 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 blah. Run up the score. That's what I say. I say a key to victory is running up the score. This defense, as we talked about before, not very good. And look, the Panthers' offense just quite frankly cannot keep up with the Texans' offense if they play up to their potential. You want to see them be even better against the run, and you want to see them make even more plays, more sacks, more turnovers, more interceptions. But the reality of it is their defense is giving them an opportunity to win or at least be in the game every single game, even the ones that they've lost at the end of games, because while they've given up some yards, they're not giving up a lot of points. They're not giving up a lot of touchdowns. So stay on brand on defense and run up the score.
I'm going with 2 offensive. Those are both good ones. I like it. I'm going with 2 offensive. Get going early and get going explosively through the air. Those have been the 2 key ingredients in the 2 pretty wins that the Texans had. There's 3 wins total, but the Steelers, the Jags, those were fun romps beginning to end. Get Nico Collins, get Tank Dell going, and with all that stuff early, Texans roll in this one. Okay, Sean, Brandon, thanks so much for coming in. We'll do it again very, very soon. And we thank you for watching Texans Extra Points. We will be back again, same time, same place, next week.